Hello, folks. Today's episode will deal with, well, it's not totally unrelated to subject matter we've discussed in recent videos because it involves a potential organ when two people pine for one another romantically. We're talking about circumcision. This is Speaker's Corner. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Speaker's Corner, and I am your host, Tim Byron. This episode will deal with a subject that might make some a bit squeamish, and as a refined British gentleman, I must apologise for my slight discomfort at the start, because this isn't necessarily the most open topic for discussion. However, it shouldn't also be a taboo. You see, my sister... brother? Well, a channel that is part of this here group is covering the subject of circumcision from a religious perspective, particularly from how it is that it came to be a Hebrew ritual and its rather grisly origins. Oh dear viewer, it's not piffle or sophistry, but fascinating details from a, well, let's call him an interesting character, shall we? Rather, really, a soothing voice from that almighty chap, though I must say. He tackles the topic in his unique and entertaining way, I suppose. Well, at least I think so. Got a voice from heaven, I think. Well, I suppose that's apt, isn't it? However, I here will stand at the Speaker's Corner and consider the subject of circumcision from historical, sociological, and medical viewpoints. Either way, I would highly recommend that you watch both our videos to get a better understanding on the subject and arm yourselves with some knowledge. You can hear his serene and my dulcet voices on what is an atypical but interesting topic. Right, circumcisions then. It turns out that Hebrews did not initiate the removal of the foreskin from the penis itself, as it stems from prehistory almost 15,000 years ago. Now, there are theories as to why a prehistoric peoples would circumcise, but the prevailing one is that it is emasculating. Literally, I suppose, to detach the penis from the body. However, back in prehistoric and ancient times, that would lead to death, so as to emasculate one's enemy would snip off a bit at the top and well, job's done. I suppose that would do the trick nowadays too. Numerous cultures all over the world, and completely disparate from each other, did the practice as well, despite no real connection. Civilizations such as the ancient Egyptians, the Mayans, Aztecs, and even Australian Aboriginals and Polynesians would perform the act. Jesus, I wonder what Freud would say. I wonder what Jung would say. Oh dear. Once we move away from prehistoric times to ancient realms such as Egypt, there seems to be a less opaque picture of what is going on with circumcisions, rather than as a, oh dear, pardon the pun, penal consequence of warring. Circumcisions came to exemplify purity. You see, even back then, there was a belief that the less sex in which one engaged, the more pure one was, especially the less enjoyment one derived from it. Therefore, what greater purity can there be? Well, apart from completely abstaining, that is, than to snip off the most sensitive bits that receive the most pleasure during sex. That is the theory, anyway, but there is no conclusive proof that this is indeed the case. However, consider that in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is one of that culture's holy texts, it claims that their chief god, Ra, circumcised himself. Considering that he was allegedly reborn every day because he symbolized the sun, well, those are a lot of foreskins. A whole lot. Oh God, imagine a pile of them. Maybe that's what the pyramids are built around. No. It was not uncommon for those circumcisions to be a rite of passage for many young males into adulthood. Ooh, ouch. Glad I don't have to live in ancient times, actually. I wouldn't want Ra circumcising me. No. The practice was a manner to express one's commitment to a pure or purer lifestyle, and still goes on to this day in places like the Philippines. You can find out more about adult circumcisions from Almighty Answers when Abraham had his way with... well, just watch the video. Don't worry, there won't be any graphic displays or anything like that, but it should prove entertaining. There is also the consideration that circumcision is more hygienic. Why would that be? You care to guess? Any guesses from the back? No? Johnson? Apologies, I just thought somebody watching might be called Johnson. That'd be quite funny. The reasoning is that the foreskin closes and therefore will retain much of, stuff in there that can lead to viruses, bacteria, etc., etc. All manner of nasty little things that would, one would not rather have down there, if you catch my drift, or anywhere else, really, for that matter. It makes sense that the less area to cover, literally, in this sense, that the less likely there will be for disease to run rampant in that area. This hygienic justification is why it is still common in places like South Korea to this day, which is a remnant of American intervention during the Korean War in the early 1950s. The principle of enacting the rite culturally was not only condoning it, but there were some civilizations that sought to limit it. The Greeks outlawed the ritual once Alexander the Great started conquering portions of the Middle East because they found the practice abhorrent. The resident Jews, however, would, quote, defy, unquote, this mandate by extending what little foreskin they had as a way to connect with the community. Imagine going to a synagogue at the time. Oi, mate, care to give us a peek at your peak to show us you belong here, eh? Blimey. The Romans also outlawed the practice, claiming that it wasn't to target their Jewish residents. Now that I've established a very basic history of the practice across all these varying societies, then the obvious question arises. Blimey. Word choice, Tim, word choice. That is to say, why do it? Why do it at all? Almighty answers that question from a Judeo-Christian perspective. It was a component of the covenant between God and his people, but a much larger portion of society does not pertain to that. It is still prevalent in the Jewish and Muslim faiths, but less so in Christian society. So why do some of those believers, and others, still circumcise? The reason is it's mostly a cultural remnant for those in English-speaking societies. This remnant stems itself in the late 19th century belief that circumcision would curtail masturbation. Masturbation was a spurious cause of various mental and physical illnesses like gonorrhea, insanity, epilepsy, and even impotence back then. So they were facing a real health crisis with false medicine. Since that point in time then, circumcision came to be a leading treatment in curbing masturbation and thus reducing all those maladies I just mentioned. Blimey, what a load of piffle, eh? That is why, for example, here in the UK, circumcision was still somewhat commonplace, but by the time of the NHS's creation in 1946, it had been considerably less standard outside of a few groups still doing it. That reduction in use was primarily due to a decrease in funding for the operation, which had to do with the belief that there was no real medical benefit in most cases. That is why there are an estimated 10 to 20% of the British male population that are circumcised. However, the Yanks are still circumcising on a fairly regular basis, but that varies culture to culture, even within the US. Some of it has to do with simply cultural norms, with groups like Black Americans, whose immediate ancestors did not come from Africa, will always perform the ritual, whereas Hispanics rarely ever do. Go figure. There are medical benefits to circumcision, such as making hygiene considerably easier. Consider how much easier it is to wash the area with no foreskin present rather than having to pull back and scrub-a-dub-a-dub-dub. Sorry if that's painted a rather vivid image in your imagination. This ease of cleaning reduces potential infections and therefore the rate of urinary tract infections, or UTIs, which are not common for men to have, but, well, not exactly rare either. There is also the benefit of reducing sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, which is why the WHO promotes the practice in certain parts of the world in which HIV and AIDS are especially prevalent. However, one can circumvent all that by practicing safe sex without the need to nick off a bit of one's prepuce or foreskin. There is also an apparent decrease in penile cancer for circumcised men, but that is a rarity. Medical organizations neither condone nor condemn the surgery, but do not advise doing it en masse. There really isn't a difference in terms of sexual pleasure or gratification between the uncircumcised and circumcised. There could be complications for those that are prone to bleeding issues or allergies to anesthesia. The foreskin could reattach itself, but it's relatively safe overall. There can be obvious medical issues with the surgery itself, especially back in Abraham's day, but today's anesthetics lead to much safer operations. Despite all this, though, there are ethical conundrums as to whether or not the infant should have a circumcision or not. Consider that the baby boy has no choice in the matter, and it could potentially lead to complications in that young man's life over something that his parents decided for him. This has been a very male-centric episode, but let us not forget about female circumcision, which is controversial to say the least. The WHO and other medical organizations refer to it as female genital mutilation, with the intent of reducing sexual pleasure to the woman. It is much akin to the notion of purity pertaining to the ancient justification for male circumcision, but considerably worse. The WHO condemns female genital mutilation and is actively seeking to forbid the practice, which entails the cutting and/or removal of the clitoris and other vaginal components to discourage women from deriving sexual pleasure. It is a barbaric custom that has no medical benefits and is capable of causing an increase in complications to both mother and child during birth, UTIs, and many more preventable horrors, not to mention the issues that can happen during the operation itself. Who knew a barking mad deity on such a bizarre topic could lead to such an interesting subject matter? He knows. He always knows. I hope you found today's episode fascinating, but should you have any questions, then I cannot stress the importance of speaking with a doctor or any other medical professional about this and any other topic pertaining to medicine, if at all possible. I may be learned and well-versed, but they are professionals and trained to handle these types of subjects. Well then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe, like, comment down below, ask me any question you like, and if you have the time, do go and check out that Balmy Gods videos if you haven't already done so. That's it for now. Ta-ta, goodbye, cheerio, pip-pip, and as always, here's looking at you, kid. Hello again, my lovelies. Thank you so much for watching that video. It really means a lot. Well, what can I say? Keep the smile going. Do remember to subscribe, ring that bell. It helps out like you wouldn't believe. It just makes me so happy. You can see this big smile of mine. Keep calm, carry on, keep a stiff upper lip, and if you like, there are some other channels in the description. I apologise for their content, but I think they're worth a watch, probably. If anything, just to educate yourself. Best of the British to you, pip pip, cheerio, and don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, this was Speaker's Corner. Ta-ra.